Welcome, everyone, to the Captive Audience. This is Kevin Hoare, and it is the 27th of August. And we are just a few months away from election time here in Oregon. And apologize for the late start. Was fighting some traffic, trying to come up I-5 and 217 on all these streets that supposedly they're spending tons of infrastructure money on to expand. Not seeing it yet. But anyway, glad to be here and hope all of you are doing well. So I'm flying solo tonight. Sunny and I have had to do that a lot lately. Fortunately, she does have Don on Wednesdays, although sometimes he's also doing the show solo. And let's just talk about some of the news. So, top national headlines. It looks like prosecutor Jack Smith, the illegally and unconstitutionally appointed prosecutor, to carry forward the cases regarding January 6th that the Brandon administration has decided to pursue, has re-indicted President Trump after the last set of indictments were partially invalidated by a Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity last month. And the new indictment is essentially the same indictment, except they just took out parts they thought didn't pass muster with the Supreme Court decision. And the statement by Smith is that he's still trying to indict President Trump for what he claims is interference or conspiracy to interfere with the presidential election. Of course, that's exactly what Jack Smith is doing now. And President Trump, the Republican nominee, responded to this by saying, in an effort to resurrect a dead witch hunt in Washington, D.C., in an act of desperation and in order to save face, the illegally appointed special counsel deranged Jack Smith has brought his ridiculous new indictment against me, which has all the problems of the old indictment and should be dismissed immediately. Obviously, this is Jack Smith maximizing the political opportunity on behalf of Kamala Harris at this point, since President Brandon has been abandoned and probably has nothing to lose and probably doesn't even know what's going on. By this time next year, Joe Biden will be sitting drooling in a chair, no matter who's president. And that's totally predictable at this point. Now, with the presidential election just months away, there is a guideline that the FBI follows, a 60-day guideline, which says that they do not file charges in anything that could relate to an active election that's underway. So this is really just a couple of days, few days, I think 5 or 6 days prior to that 60-day time period. And so that's why you saw it today. The President Trump went on to explain. Maybe now's the time. Sorry, that's one of the videos of a news report playing itself, which I hate. He said that this is merely an attempt to interfere with the election, distract the American people from the catastrophes Kamala Harris has inflicted on our nation, like the border invasion, migrant crime, rampant inflation, the threat of World War III, and more. Trump's post continued. By the way, this is really interesting, and I just heard this actually on SiriusXM, Fox News, Jesse Waters, or Laura Ingraham. I can't remember which one. But there's apparently a National Space Council, kind of like a National Security Council, National Space Council. And guess who heads up the National Space Council? That's right. Vice President Giggles, Kamala Harris, the Democrat nominee who's never had anyone vote for her for president. Well, guess what we're experiencing right now? We're experiencing a space travel, space flight crisis, because the Boeing I believe it's called Starliner, that was designed to carry astronauts to the International Space Station has experienced severe uh, um, flaws, defects that they're trying to get to the bottom of, and it's not safe to fly. So Boeing has been working with NASA, and um, NASA had to decide just the other day that they are not going to go and bring back the astronauts they took up there. The astronauts they took up there in Starliner, who were supposed to come back, are two astronauts who were supposed to only spend, I believe it was 2 weeks in Earth orbit. They now face 8 months in Earth orbit. 8 months. And the NASA administrator is the former senator whose name I can't remember right now from Florida, who used to be an astronaut. And he looks like he's about 800 years old now. And he's probably aging more quickly while this crisis goes on because NASA cannot go and get these people for 8 months. You know, it'd be like if you went on vacation for 2 weeks and you ended up staying there for 8 months, and that would be on Earth. Imagine being in space and it wasn't your plan to be up there that long. Well, guess what? There is somebody that's going to go get them in 8 months, but it's not Boeing. It's Elon Musk's SpaceX that is going to go and get them. And as you know, the Brandon administration hates Elon Musk and SpaceX, not just because of Twitter, but because, of course, more recently, Elon Musk has been complimentary and, in fact, has supported President Trump for re-election, and is spending money to that effect, as we understand it. So, but guess what? The head of the National Space Council is Kamala Harris. Everywhere she goes, everything she's put in charge of, everything fails. And it doesn't just fail, it becomes a disaster, like an earth-shaking disaster. And the National Space Council is a flop with her in charge of it. Yeah, so border czar. She was clearly the border czar. So many media accounts can now be brought back and prove that this is the case. Plus, we have video of her accepting the role from President Brandon, and now she's running from it and trying to rewrite history so that she can get elected. You know, she might be the first, or maybe Mike Dukakis is the first, but the first Democrat nominee that all we have to do is tell the truth about her and say everything there is to know about her that is public fact. And lo and behold, we will see her defeated. Well, let's hope it works out that way, because the media is much more formidable than they were in the Dukakis 88 election against George H.W. because the media, look what they did to help get President Brandon elected, and the way they lied about the Hunter Biden laptop and all of the things that Biden was implicated in, and they covered it up, along with the deep state at the FBI and the Department of Justice and the CIA. That's right, guys. I know you can hear me. So, you know, I am concerned because I think they can actually cover up and misinform people very, very effectively. And so we're at a stage now where it's getting real. We could actually see the biggest lies of all time perpetrated, in addition to the biggest lie of all time that finally blew up, which is that Joe Biden isn't senile and could serve another 4 years. That lie simply cratered when the presidential debate took place at the end of June. Yes, Ding Dong wants to change our Constitution and the Supreme Court. Well, it's true. They want us to change the Supreme Court because they want the Supreme Court to be a super legislature in robes. They don't want them to be independent and um, and make decisions simply based on the law and the facts and precedent. They want to be able to have them validate and improve, make political decisions is what they want. And when justices have done that in the past, it's had a tremendous effect on our country and created decades of strife. And that's the Roe versus Wade decision was um, uh, a legal innovation that of invention of law that didn't exist. That's why it collapsed. It was bad jurisprudence, and then after that, the political pressure set in for decades that finally also gave way to that decision being not only vacated, but then um, the political process restored so that people's elected representatives would start to decide what the laws are instead of the Supreme Court. So yeah, the Supreme Court is in the crosshairs. If you thought that in 2016 that was just about who would be on the Supreme Court, particularly to replace Antonin Scalia, who died in January of 2016, then this time it's going to be about whether you're even going to have something that we know to be the Supreme Court. It's just not going to exist. The Democrats get a hold of it. And they will do things that are probably unconstitutional and create a constitutional crisis, which they like to constantly talk about constitutional crises. But they're the creators of constitutional crises. It's what they do. Back to the national news. So we talked about Jack Smith's re-indictment and political manipulation. President Trump has announced that there's an agreement for a debate on ABC. They said the debate rules will be the same as the CNA debate rules. Candidates will not allowed to bring cheat sheets or notes. I'm not sure that has a big factor in this because President Trump obviously doesn't use notes. Not really. Kamala Harris might be impacted by it because she does have a problem going off script. But having said that, in past debates, she has been kind of an attack dog type, and she's launched a few attacks. She's also been attacked and not known what to do. But I guess she's going to have time to prep. The real issue about cheat sheets is the fact that Joe Biden had no idea what was going on. His brain didn't work. So he needed cheat sheets just to get through it. And so the September 10th debate will take place in Philadelphia. It'll be moderated by ABC World News Tonight anchor and managing editor David Muir, Mirror, as in Mirror Woods, and ABC News Live prime anchor Lindsay Davis. And so this will be the first debate between Trump and Harris because the last one pretty much blew up the Biden re-election effort. Trump said the debate rules will be the same as CNN's, and he said, "I've reached an agreement with the radical left Democrats for a debate with Comrade Kamala Harris. It will be broadcast live on ABC Fake News by far the nastiest and most unfair newscaster in the business on Tuesday, September 10th in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania." Yeah, you can guarantee. You have to assume, by the way, when you're up there that every mic is hot. And then if you don't see it, there is a hot mic you can't see. We've also been given assurance by ABC that this will be a fair and equitable debate and that neither side will be given the questions in advance. Parentheses, no Donna Brazile. She gave the questions in 2016 to Hillary Clinton in a Democrat debate. Anyway, it was 2016, or was that earlier? Maybe. Well, the cheating goes way back, so it's hard to remember now. He said a third debate is possible either through Fox News on September 4th or NBC News in the future, but Harris has not agreed to either debate so far. Well, I can guarantee you Harris will not agree to a debate on Fox News. She might be asked tough questions. And NBC News, well, I think traditionally there's been 3 debates, but Biden and Harris have tried to alter that tradition to 2. And that foreign policy has usually been featured in the third debate. And as we found, we actually had to have Joe Biden become president in order to find out what his foreign policy is. And it's been an unmitigated disaster on every level, starting with the Afghanistan withdrawal, the Ukraine war, which he should have prevented, everything that's going on in the Middle East now. And of course, the weakness and foolishness that has enticed China into thinking that they might be able to take Taiwan. And that's just for starters. Believe me, they screwed up many other things and done profound damage to the United States in the last 3 years and 9 months. But anyway, the September 10th debate will be in the National Constitution Center near Independence Hall, where the historic Declaration of Independence and the Constitution were signed. So you can bet there's going to be some pontificating about how much Kamala Harris reveres the Constitution, which I don't know if she has a copy anymore since she's already put it through the shredder multiple times during the Biden-Harris administration. Here's really something fascinating. And I'll put the link to this news about the debate. I think everybody will find that very interesting. Yeah, the Democrats do create crises and then blame others. And that's how they roll. They project, that's why you know what they're doing. It's when they're accusing somebody else of it. But here's one moment where it looks like Nancy Pelosi, who is on video, on a hot mic, as it were, having recognized that she did not allow the National Guard to be there on January 6th, and that she kind of regretted that. Well, it turns out not only did this admission happen, but now there's a report that she expressed regret that the National Guard wasn't pre-positioned to protect the Capitol on January 6th. She said, we will have totally failed and we've got to take some responsibility. Now, she said that on January 6th. And she said it on footage that was shot by her own daughter, who was making a documentary. What's fascinating about this is Nancy Pelosi has not done what she said in that video she needed to do. And here's what it says in the report. It's a John Solomon report on Just the News. So I'm going to post that here. We're calling out the National Guard now. They should have been here to start out, Pelosi can be heard saying as she flees through a tunnel under the Capitol on the afternoon of January 6, 2021, as her daughter Alexandra videotaped her for an eventual HBO movie. Pelosi's expressions of personal regret were not fully aired in that documentary, of course not, and only recently turned over to the House Administration Oversight Subcommittee Chair Barry Loudermilk, who took over the congressional investigation of January 6 security failures when Republicans came into control of the House in January 2023. So this most recent footage given to Congress does provide a stark contrast to what Pelosi said publicly, that she had no responsibility for security arrangements on January 6th, and they blame President Trump, who, in fact, the documentary evidence exists and has been provided, as well as witness testimony, that he offered these National Guard troops to do this and was turned down. And Pelosi said she had no responsibility for security arrangements for January 6th, even though the top House security officer, Sergeant at Arms Paul Irving, reported to her. So she's either saying Paul Irving made the decision, but then the buck stops with her anyway. In the footage, Pelosi can be seen pressing for Irving to resign immediately, and she acknowledged that her fellow lawmakers had repeatedly pressed her ahead of January 6th to ensure there was adequate security. And by the way, there were plenty of reports after that lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, so several Republicans pointed out that we needed security. So providing no security, which is what you ended up having, and then knowing, by the way, as we know, that there were reports by the FBI and Homeland Security that they should expect some violent elements to show up at this and get involved in the activities. And that's what happened. And so there were some violent elements there that did this. And then a lot of other people just got caught up in it because they were there just straightforward, peacefully protesting. Democrats really don't know what a peaceful protest is, because they think a peaceful protest is when flames are shooting up in the background, but you're protesting against racial injustice and Republicans. But it's not a peaceful protest if you're a grandma in sweatpants that happens to be at the Capitol building just outside protesting an election. That is not okay, because you won that election as far as you're concerned. So you see how the definitions work? They don't really work. But let's see. Kangaroo Committee destroy. Yes, the January 6th committee did destroy evidence and documents. They also outright lied about the information they had, and then caused other testimony to Congress to be hidden and concealed all the way until the new Congress came in. And then, of course, the stuff they destroyed was to prevent the new Congress from getting a hold of it. Because that's what you do when you do Democrat investigatory committees. You destroy evidence so that no one can get to the truth. That's what a Democrat investigation is. Pelosi said in this video, how many times did members ask, are we prepared? Are we prepared? We're not prepared for the worst. Later, she added, we'll have totally failed and we've got to take responsibility. She's done none of those things. Also, the offer by President Trump and its rejection by Deputy Police Chief Sean Gallagher was memorialized in an after-action timeline created by the Capitol Police to review security failures. In other words, in their own after-action report, they admitted that they turned down the security assistance offered by President Trump. Carol Corbin, Department of Justice, texts USCP, so United States Capitol Police Deputy Chief Sean Gallagher, Protective Service Bureau, to determine whether USCP is considering a request for National Guard soldiers for January 6, 2021 event. The following morning, the timeline states, Gallagher replies to DOD via text that a request for National Guard support not forthcoming at this time, with consultation after consultation with COP Sund, that is Chief of Police Sund. And so they have the full police timeline available in this report. And the ex-Capitol Police Chief Sund told Congress he wanted the National Guard in advance of January 6th, but was denied permission to ask for them by top security officials reporting to Pelosi and incoming leader Chuck Schumer. He said, on January 3rd, I requested the assistance of the National Guard to support my perimeter and was denied by the two sergeant-at-arms over concerns for politics and optics. Politics and optics. That pretty much describes how the Democrats operate. And even if it was just the incompetence of politics and optics, it also goes too far that based on what happened and based on the obvious information available at that time, that it just still feels intentional. Because it's just, sometimes you just can't be that stupid with having all that information. And so they said Pelosi claimed that she made clear her resistance to leaving the Capitol was driven by a desire to get Biden approved for president and not let the protesters prevail. But then she also railed on this Sund guy. And so whoever these security officials are that were reporting to Pelosi that Sund is referencing, have we heard any testimony from them whatsoever? Shouldn't they be in jail? Really? They should be held. They should be questioned. If they refuse to be questioned, then, gross incompetence doesn't even describe this. Because then, of course, they had an obligation to come forward and explain what's going on. And you know what? I just hope that Nancy Pelosi gets to spend the rest of her Botoxed years in a prison cell for what she's done on this, because she didn't just precipitate this whole thing and then admit she was stupid on video, but she also did one other thing. She perpetrated a 3-year lie about what happened in order to gain political advantage. She did that, and people still don't actually know that this is true. So anyway, yeah, the most troubling thing I've heard today, actually, I only heard on Fox News and haven't seen a published printed report yet. But apparently, this statement by the Secret Service interim director that no additional assistance, security assistance, Secret Service assistance, and in particular, counter snipers were denied. They said that nothing was denied to the Trump campaign and the Secret Service contingent there. But now, as of today, it was reported on Fox News that we now know that the reason why no security assistance was rejected is because it was pre-rejected. The Secret Service leadership reached out to the Secret Service contingent that was protecting President Trump and overseeing these rallies. They were told, don't ask because it will be rejected. So that's why nothing was rejected, because they didn't ask. So someone who made that decision has yet to be held accountable. And here we are. This is over a month and a half since that happened. We've had 2 conventions. We've had multiple rallies. And it turns out that what they did, and I guess as the morning of the event, counter snipers were permitted and deployed. But up until the morning of the event, the request for counter snipers was denied. Can you imagine what would have happened if they didn't have a counter sniper available to shoot that guy who was firing at President Trump and the crowd behind him? I mean, actually, it probably wouldn't have worked out for any of them, because even though there would have been Secret Service jumping on President Trump, they all could have gotten shot and killed. And that has been hidden up until this moment. So the current Secret Service director is either grossly incompetent because he didn't know this and find this out, or he lied to Congress. They'll stop at nothing. And someone decided that security was not going to be provided. Someone decided that, and that person has to explain what they decided and why. And if they did so out of a sense of malice or contempt, they should be brought up on charges and prosecuted. Even if it's just as an individual for reckless endangerment, or in the case of the person who was killed, manslaughter for sure. So I think we've got a lot more to find out about what happened in that assassination attempt. By the way, since I was last on, RFK Jr. Decided to end his campaign and endorse President Trump. And we've also learned that he talked to both campaigns. And I guess it was pretty clear after the dialogue he had with President Trump that President Trump was the guy who was actually listening to him. President Trump was the one who was open to his ideas about addressing some of the issues with Americans' health and the way these agencies are run, like the FDA and so on. You know what? Years ago, it would have sounded crazy that someone was saying that the FDA was corrupt and that it was being run by corporations that they were supposed to be overseeing and regulating, and that they perhaps were allowing a lot of people to become ill or take on illnesses because of what they allow to happen or not inform people about with regard to the food they eat, as well as, but you know what? Wind the clock back 5 or 6 years, and a lot changed about vaccines in people's minds for sure, because there's a rot at the CDC. So now we know that, the CDC, huge problems. FBI, DOJ, CIA, Department of Homeland Security. I'm naming agencies and departments that have actually completely betrayed themselves as trustworthy entities and are actually working against the interests of the American people to the point that they are politicized and corrupted. And now RFK Jr. is pointing out maybe the FDA is like this because of what he's seen and the issues he's brought forward. I think he's come around at just the right time to bring this forward, because I do think that Americans need to look at their health. They need to look at what is happening in this country, and not as a result of the government mandating things, but certainly the government shouldn't be aiding and perpetrating it. I mean, I think there's a diabetes epidemic in this country, in part because of how the U.S. government decided to come up with what they thought was the healthiest meal for people to eat. And the healthiest meal, this food pyramid and the square meal that they came up with, actually doesn't work because it's led to people, and of course, telling people to get fat out of the diet and replace it with what turned out to be carbs has actually accelerated something that is now a major problem for the entire population. This is processed carbs actually were put forward as being okay. So we got to start asking these questions. And I think the only chance that these questions get asked and answered and action taken is if people actually start to listen to some of the folks that were considered quirky and weird. And now we have a government we don't trust at almost any level in some of the most trusted agencies that were ever created. So I think that was good. I think that this is going to be very interesting to see how this develops. If there's a benefit for the Trump campaign, I don't know. Voting is different from policy, but it was quite a moment to see RFK Jr. go up on the stage, endorse President Trump, and then explain his point of view. I have noticed that the effort to paint President Trump as narrow-minded and foolhardy and uninterested in the truth and uninterested in solving problems, just interested in himself, that just doesn't match at all what reality is. He, in fact, listens. He engages. He is interested in what people have to say. He's certainly broken the mold on a lot of things that were once considered stuff the Republican Party wouldn't talk about or wouldn't even engage in. And now some of it's almost commonplace policy as the party acquires now a huge number of working class voters who feel abandoned by the party that once considered itself the party of the working class. They've lost that. They're the party of hedge fund managers, Hollywood moguls, and movie stars, leftist big tech thugs, and frankly, a whole series of special interests that work against the national security interests of the United States. Very simple. Here's a nice report. I want to give you some good news, and then I'll delve into a little bit of Oregon news. Pennsylvania registers more new Republicans than Democrats in July. July was a good month for Republicans, and it looks like in the aftermath of many of the things that were going on, the withdrawal of Biden, the assassination attempt in Butler on July 13th, and then the subsequent weeks of Democrats dawdling and trying to come up with a new nominee, which they did quickly. Republicans edged out Democrats in terms of registering new voters. And the Democrats have a much larger, more robust operation by and large for registering people. And this is in a critical swing state where, who registers with your party actually does really matter, because then you've got people who don't register with any party, and then those are the jump ball voters. But you bank a lot of votes by getting people registered to your party because their tendency to vote with you is much higher. So let's get to some Oregon news here. I really found it very interesting that Oregon is ranked among the states with the least amount of internet expansion. Now, how many times have we talked on this show or done this show with people that are using internet from rural areas, and we've talked about how the promise of rural broadband internet is something that, despite the amount of money spent by Democrats in the state with this intention, they just haven't delivered it. And now we find out that we are 37 out of 50 in terms of having sufficient internet coverage, particularly in rural areas. And it says here Curry County was the county with the most progress, with at least a 10% increase in households with broadband access, 1,607 new households. But anybody who's traveled out there, and that's in the 4th District where I've done some traveling, it's sparse. It's almost like a throwback to, AOL dial-up days. It kind of feels like there's just not very good coverage. And cell phone coverage is not that great out there. And but this is in a state where we were told every few years that they had once again spent money on expanding rural internet access, and that this would be a boon for all these areas. It's just not happening. This is something that we should let people know. It's like the government's terrible at this. They're terrible. They don't know how to do it. They won't do it. And they kind of pretend at times to be doing it because clearly money is being spent and progress is not being made. All of our broadband access has really been through private sector companies that have gotten investment and then expanded it. So the government's singularly bad at the entire affair. Just letting you know, that's what we're seeing. Here's the big news in Oregon from the past so many days. I first saw this article come out last week. Representative Ed Deal, not long after he was on our show, and had a lot of great information to share. We replayed that show last night. I wasn't available to do the show last night, but Ed Deal had great information to share about Measure 118 and ranked choice voting. We are going to have him back on because he wants to talk about Measure 113. But here was the fascinating thing. So the other day he texts me something that shows that there are actually people are receiving money, $30,000 for buying homes, and they are not. It's money, it's government money, federal money, I guess, but it's not permitted to go to citizens. It's only permitted to go to non-citizens. And they said the reason for that is because there's it's the cause of discrimination in people being able to purchase housing turns out to be whether or not you're a citizen. And so this taxpayer funded nonprofit in Oregon called Hacienda, they've advertised this. They literally said requirements: first-time home buyer, no home ownership in the last 3 years. Number 2, at least 18 years old. So far, all reasonable. Number 3, eligible citizenship statuses: non-U.S. citizens, undocumented persons, DACA recipients, refugees, asylees, immigrants, and then a whole alphabet soup of other people who are not citizens. In other words, the one group of people not eligible are citizens. So they're taking money from citizens and they're giving it to non-citizens, while citizens actually can't afford to buy homes because of the expense that's involved with this. And so a reporter at the Epoch Times wrote an article about this, and I'm putting it in here, that she shared that covers this. It was using a $692,775 grant from the state of Oregon's Economic Equity Investment Program. The funds are part of SB 1579, a bill that established this program and provided $15 million for economic programs based on race, ethnicity, and citizenship status. In other words, they created a program to reward people who are not citizens for being here, and then we'll give them free money. And once this graphic from Hacienda itself was circulated on social media, there's a massive backlash. And that backlash really just engulfed this program. And so it started spreading around the country. It sounded like something that, once again, stupid idiot Oregon has come up with an outrageous program that no one can quite believe is true. And it's making national news. And, it really, I mean, it's HUD certified housing, and they would get financial coaches, housing counselors. They could attend mortgage readiness and financial fitness workshops. And so Ed Deal, the state representative that sent this to me, called the effort state-sponsored discrimination, noting that, saying that he's appalled that the hard-earned limited tax dollars of Oregonians are being used to prioritize home ownership for certain non-U.S. citizens. And this is what is insane, because if there's a complaint, especially amongst young people, that's near the top of the list, it is certainly that they cannot afford to buy a home. That the dream of home ownership is almost certainly not achievable for a good percentage right now of young people. I've had people, when going knocking doors and talking to voters down in the 4th Congressional District, say, they'll actually laugh like, yeah, there is no chance. Young people in themselves laughing like, there's no chance I can't buy a house. Not only is the original price high, but the cost of the loans are too high, because they've tripled because of inflation, which is caused by the Brandon administration printing too much money and funding too many programs, which apparently just made everything more expensive, including the Inflation Reduction Act, the Orwellian Inflation Reduction Act. Now, Senator Bonham, the leader of Republicans in the state Senate, called this non-citizen housing handout outrageous in the middle of a housing crisis. Easily a good point, and one that, was the reason they said why Senate Republicans unanimously opposed SB 1579 in 2022, because they foresaw the negative consequences of such measures. And said our focus should be on helping Oregon citizens, not extending benefits to non-citizens. That is not the focus of spending money. And yet this is what Democrats do all day long. Well, guess what? Oregon, so there's been a backlash. And after this backlash, this nonprofit Hacienda has come out and says state-funded homebuyer assistance doesn't exclude U.S. citizens. It says it in the promotional materials very clearly. And it was funded by something designed to help non-citizens by the state. But now the chief executive officer, Ernesto Fonseca, said a consultant created the marketing materials, which he mistakenly stated the down payment assistance program excludes non-citizens. In fact, U.S. citizens participate but must qualify under other economic equity risk factors outlined in state law. So there it is, equity. Just when you thought that word would go away, it's back again. So anyway, this one has just created this firestorm, because I don't believe for a second that some dude, a marketing guy, just made a mistake. They have invented an excuse for this. But not to be outdone, apparently in California, and I don't have a printed article to share with you, but in California, I just heard on Jesse Waters' show that they are going to have a program that's passed both houses of the legislature, the state assembly, and the state senate in California. And it's heading to Governor Gavin Newsom's desk for a signature, who won't comment on it, even though the only thing left is for him to sign it. That would provide up to $150,000 in down payments for non-citizens, illegal immigrants, actually, to purchase homes. They're actually going to do that in California, provided that the governor signs it into law. And the only thing about that $150,000, which I thought was humorous, is somebody said, yes, you can't even buy an old refrigerator box to live in for $150,000 in California, much less a home. And that's probably true, but it is money that they would contribute to this. And it's just insane. It's outrageous. This is what government's doing. Here's something else government's doing. Multnomah County Chair Jessica Vega Peterson, who's a radical leftist and in favor, has done everything to defeat the new Measure 110 reform. The county has apologized for her misstatement on a proposal to deal with the ambulance problem in the county. They're saying now that she provided accidentally inaccurate information during a pivotal meeting about an ambulance. An ambulance crisis sounds like a pretty serious matter. If you don't have ambulances and you can't get to the hospital sometimes and no one can take you. But they wanted 100% hybrid ambulances, and they wanted zero basic life support ambulances. Anyway, an investigative reporter for Coin 6, Elise Haas, was listening in and knew the statement wasn't true, citing documentation in interviews from previous reporting. And the proof never came. She asked the county to prove it, and now the county is apologizing for a misstatement. So anyway, you can take a look at this article, but this is the idiots that we have running the largest county in the state. And yeah, I don't know if she's a drug dealer. I don't know. It's a great question. She's the one who claimed later that she was fooled and misinformed by subordinates when the money was spent by Multnomah County to hand out foil and straws to people to do so they could do fentanyl. She was the one who said, well, nobody told me, I didn't know. But yet every other thing she's done has been pro what they call harm reduction, which is they also had a book on how to take drugs via your anus that they put out. It's called boofing. And they had a $5 book that they were handing out that was paid for by Multnomah County. Again, she's like, I had no idea. She's still responsible for all that. Portland small businesses under pressure, but optimistic. Okay. I like optimism, but under pressure sounds kind of like what's been happening for a long time. I don't know if they're going to be able to get through this. Let's see. So ODOT has released new I-5 tolling rules, and they're going to accept public input. That's right. One of the things that people hate absolutely the most is tolling, and it's very unpopular. It is disapproved of in poll after poll after poll, and they don't plan to use the tolling to fund highway expansion. They plan to just use it to make the highways that exist more expensive so they can get more sources of income. And we've covered this on here because there is a ballot initiative for which people are trying to get signatures, vote before tolls, in which it'll require a vote of the people on any tolls that are going to be put in place. But nevertheless, ODOT is now putting forward rules that will designate tolls and set rates for the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. By the way, that's a bridge that's going to reduce the capacity of I-5, and you're going to pay more for it. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? And so this is what's coming to a place near you. You might think that's just Portland, but a lot of people have to use I-5 to get places. Oh, sorry, I put it in there twice. And they're going to do it where you are, because once they get this idea going that they can just charge you more for the same thing that you've already paid for and force you not to use it, and then finance things that don't solve problems and reduce capacity, they're just going to do it all day long. Anyway, I wanted to make sure that that you got the maximum info from today. There's so much more news that I could cover here. There's been news in the 4th District. I'm going to pass that news on to, because it just came out, I'm going to pass it along to Sonny and Don, and hopefully they can cover it tomorrow night. I really appreciate your viewership and appreciate you guys sharing your time with me and with Sonny and Don. And we're going to keep plowing ahead here, because the captive audience, we were told by a lot of people at David Darnell's Celebration of Life event, just people that showed up at this solely because they knew him from captive audience, heard about what was going on, wanted to express their condolences, but then also came up to Sonny and I, and we spoke during the event together. We got up there together and we spoke and shared what David meant to us, both in terms of captive audience and otherwise, but then also learned that there were a whole bunch of people commenting online, as well as showing up in person, who had seen it, been touched by it. One person actually commented, and it was David's son, David Jr., read, you guys did this show. You helped me understand what was going on at just the moment I needed it the most during COVID, because I just couldn't make sense of the world anymore. And I'm glad we do this. I'm glad that you guys listen in, and I do ask that you keep sharing it with folks, because it does seem like there's a lot of people who at one time or another see this and they have no idea it exists. Ed Deal asked me to send him a link to the show that he did about ranked choice voting a number of months back, because he wanted to use it in order to let people know, if you can't, if you want to share this with other people and tell them. He went to a meeting, explained what ranked choice voting is and what the problem with it is. And then he wanted him to share that with other people. And the best way to do that was to share the captive audience that he did when he came on. So we'll keep doing this. It's kind of a vital public service. It's the only place that you can get news and opinion like this in the state, on a live streaming channel. Again, I'm sorry for starting late today. I appreciate you guys hanging in there later. Love you guys too. And keep fighting the good fight. Do what you can. Donate to candidates. I know that there are candidates that are not only fighting the good fight, they got a really good chance. I've mentioned Monique Despain in the 4th District. Of course, Lori Chavez Dreamer holding on to that seat in the 5th. Mike Erickson in the 6th. And then there's a whole range of other candidates. Will Lathrop running for Attorney General. And they're serious. Throw whatever you can at them, because I can tell you that they've all built up their campaigns to the point that if they get the resources, they can triumph this fall. They need your help, and you need to let people know. And we will have some of them on here in the coming weeks. I can promise you that. That way you can hear more, and you can say more and share more with everyone you know. Again, thanks for watching here tonight. And Sonny and Don will be here with the next episode of The Captive Audience tonight. Good night, and